I hate this movie so much, I refuse to retain any information about it. And he's all like, oh, you can't go here, you can't go there. He does this with Robin too. He does it with Robin as well. Simon Miller, the bald a-hole here. Thank you for joining me as always. And look, if you are a regular watcher of this channel, you're like, Simon, where did this video come from? Look, let's just break it down like D-Generation X. Flipping love Batman. I'm a bit obsessed with Batman. Batman is one of my favorite things on the planet. And there are some people in my life that I would give up if I got to do something with Batman. Don't even know what that means. It sounds a little bit creepy. So, given that the Batman is coming out next week, and I am super duper excited about it, I thought, well, I have a YouTube channel. We do daily videos. Let's rank every single Batman movie from worst to best. And amazingly too, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, the free-to-play mobile game you can download right now. And yes, look, it is a role-playing game. I like RPGs, and I'm just gonna level with you. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I mostly play it when I'm sitting on the toilet because it's that easy to use, and it just passes some of the time. One of the most unique selling points of Raid Shadow Legends 2 is that it has over 600 champions, but it also has a bunch of badass bosses, including this chap, Sir Galaroth, Guardian of the Arcade Keep. Unlike most of the other Potion Keep bosses, though, this dude is actually pretty nice. And while he is guarding a bunch of arcane potions, he's checking to see if you are worthy of getting your hands on them. And in order to do that, you've gotta beat him up. And the best way to do that is to use teamwork and strategies that you will formulate as you play the game. And there's also a bunch of new stuff happening in Raid this month, because it has a fresh rotation of the brutal Hydra bosses and a ton of events and tournaments every single day, including some special Valentine's Day events where you can get your hands on a brand new legendary champion. So this really is the best time to get involved with Raid Shadow Legends, and if you click the QR code on the screen right now or use the link in the description below, you will get a bunch of cool bonuses, including a free epic champion Vergis, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill and 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in the game. So thank you once again to Raid Shadow Legends for supporting this video. I hope you have a good time. And of course, as we are doing it about Batman, we're going to click our fingers and get a magical new backdrop in there. Yes, it's green screen. You actually think I live in a house like that in my dreams, although always dream big, always believe, so maybe one day will. And of course, the comment section is right there. You ain't going to agree with anything that I'm about to say, so go nuts as much as you want in the comments. It's okay, as long as you're nice. Let's be constructive and let's be fair. So, when it comes to the movies we are doing live action movies only, apart from one, and only because I love it so much, I want to be able to talk about it. So, maybe we'll go and do the animated ones at another time. If you like this kind of video, I will look at my analytics. So, yes, so I believe that there is 10 live action. We're doing 11 here, because again, I'm breaking my own rules. I'm bringing one in. So, we'll go 11 to 1. I'm going to start with number 11, and you won't be surprised, is Batman and Robin. Now, it came out in 1997. It was directed by Joel Schumacher. Obviously, it had George Clooney as Batman. And I'm not going to say anything here that you haven't heard before, but it's not a Batman movie. It is a toy movie. It was made, and every single person involved with the thing, if you go watch the behind-the-scenes documentaries, etc., will tell you the same thing. It was designed because they wanted to sell toys. They wanted to sell action figures. They wanted you to buy the Batmobile. They wanted you to buy the Batwing. And that's okay. Like, let's not pretend that I don't do this. Like, do I have a Lego Batmobile? Yes. Do I have a Lego Batwing? Yes. Am I going to continue to buy stuff like that? Of course I will. But when your whole idea is you just want to make a bunch of money, and you don't think about the law, and you don't think about the fans, you don't think about what Batman represents, it's going to be crap. And there is so many problems with this movie. Like, Batgirl's in it, played by Alicia Silverstone, and she's Alfred's daughter. No, she's not Alfred's aunt, but she's some stupid distant relationship. I hate this movie so much, I refuse to retain any information about it. And he's all like, oh, you can't go here, you can't go there. He does this with Robin too. He does it with Robin as well. But he's all like, oh no, you can't do it, you can't do it. And then he just lets her into the Batcave, and he says, here's a CD. Don't watch the CD. And she just goes and watches. He's like, oh, hey, do you want to be Batgirl now? That is the origin story for Batgirl. Alfred goes, well, I made you a suit, so why can't you put it on?
I expected you might find your way down here, child. As such, I programmed my brain algorithms into the Bat computer.
I also don't like Robin in these movies, especially because, let's take the Poison Ivy spin-off, whatever you want to call it, the storyline, I should say. They're fighting over whether they want to kiss Poison Ivy. And I know she's got the poison, but oh man, and then for some reason, they have plastic lips and the bat suit. I don't even care about the nipples, right? The nipples are awful. They're terrible. But there are so many other things that are bad, like the Batman credit card. I don't give a hoot that the suit has nipples on it. So this is a disaster. I don't think I've ever watched it more than once. And again, I've watched all the behind the scenes stuff. George Clooney came out and apologized for it. He said, I'm really, really sorry. And it's not his fault. Like, I'm pretty sure back in 1997, the Clooney shouldn't have done it, wasn't the super duper star that he was now. So he probably didn't have the same power. In fact, he probably took on the Batman role because he thought, wow, Batman, huge franchise. I can use that to take a step up to the next level. And if he did now, he probably would have intervened and said, what are we doing? This script is atrocious. Now, we always like to try and find the good here on my channel. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I mean, he's not Mr. Freeze. He's just Arnold Schwarzenegger. But he's clearly having so much fun, that's okay. But when I say it's okay, I mean like 1-2%. This is an atrocious movie. And again, it's not a Batman movie. It's not a Batman movie. A good Batman movie should be able to appreciate some of the nuances of the character, and it never does it. It's just three people that have dressed up in spandex because it's something to do on any given day. And following on from that, in number 10, and this one is going to annoy everybody. And I really did think about this list. I don't hate this movie. It's just not the kind of Batman that I want in my life. So we are talking about Adam West, Batman 1966, with the shark repellent or whatever it was. Again, I don't watch it that much. And I don't want to take too many shots at this because I think what Adam West did with Batman back in the day was actually quite fun. Like in the mid-60s, it wasn't exactly the kind of franchise that it was now. If you're into the comics, sure, you totally understood it. But as a way to get the Batman name back into the mainstream, I do understand it a little bit. But again, as you will see as we go through this list, I need my Batman to be dark. I need my Batman to be edgy. I need it to be all kinds of screwed up because, of course, I mean, talking to the choir here, preaching to the choir, it's about a kid that has lost his parents and for some reason decides, well, I know how I'll try and deal with this. I will just like a bat and I'll run around. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have different interpretations of it. That's the coolest thing about comics and graphic novels is that no matter who your character of choice is, they go off in so many weird and wonderful ways, right? You end up in, with characters dying or characters doing this or people that you wouldn't have suspected to take up the mantle doing so. And you should always be able to do that. I think with any kind of creative endeavor, I don't want to go too off field here, but it's like the James Bond thing. People always go, oh, you can't have so-and-so be James Bond. Of course you can. James Bond is an entity and you should have as much possible fun with it as you can. It's the same with professional wrestling. I always say this. In pro wrestling, there's no barriers. So as soon as you introduce barriers, I mean, some barriers should be if it's like poor taste. But as soon as you do introduce that, I think you kind of move away from the idea. So I don't hate it. Not like Batman and Robin, which I actually outwardly hate. It's just when I probably have seen it more than once. I'm probably lying there. But, when I do see it, it's fun and it's entertaining, but not for the way that Batman should be. However, if you want to make an argument that maybe it was these Batman movies that allowed Batman to become what it is today, I mean, I probably would argue with you, but I'd also probably appreciate your point. And moving on to 9, 1995, Batman Forever, which is kind of difficult because, again, this is the first one that Joel Schumacher took on. And while it wouldn't be as gratuitous as the follow-up would be, all those similar kind of bullet points are there, right? You can see it, especially when you compare the two. But also, this actually was kind of a nightmare production because Tim Burton was meant to do the third one. Michael Keaton was signed up as well. But because Batman Returns, that we'll talk about in due course, was so dark and it was so flubbed up, Warner was like, no, we need to, who knows what he'd written for script 3, but he was like, no, there's no way. You need to get on board with McDonald's, who they fell out with on Batman Returns. You need to jolly this up a bit. We want to sell it to kids. And Tim Burton was like, well, I don't want to do that. So as soon as Tim Burton pulled out, Michael Keaton was like, well, I'm going to pull out. And then all of a sudden, this incredible franchise that you had built, and never underestimate the power of 1989 Batman, which we'll also get into, that was an absolutely super huge success. When it did get released, we had to pivot and we had to go left field. And you really, really do. I actually think that Val Kilmer as Batman is okay. I wouldn't say that he's one of my favorites. I don't think the script does him many favors because, of course, he is scripted at some point to walk off from Chase Meridian and just smile. So I'm like, what are you doing? But some of the origin story here is kind of cool, and Val Kilmer is a good actor, right? So it's not like we went to, I can't even think of a bad actor now, but it's not like he sucks in the role. But it's really all the peripheral cast, again, because they're trying to sell toys, they're just, we're going to get as many villains into this as humanly possible. The two major ones being Harvey Two-Face and the Riddler. And on both occasions, the problem is how they're represented. Like, Tommy Lee Jones as Harvey Two-Face probably could have been pretty damn good. However, it's just Tommy Lee Jones with his face painted, and you cannot come up in here in my house and tell me that the Riddler isn't just Jim Carrey, because it is. It's just Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey. And I like Jim Carrey. I like Jim Carrey a lot. I think he's quite entertaining in his movies, as he is with most of his films. But when you are a nerd and a geek like me, it's just not what I wanted to see. I wanted to see probably the kind of interpretation that we're going to get in a week, if you watch this on day one, when the Batman gets released, because that character is really interesting and really fascinating. And here it was just Jim Carrey going, oh my gosh, I'm Jim Carrey. And also the story makes no sense. Like, he's got some kind of brain device and it's feeding him. I mean, because it is kind of comic-y, but when you try and get that across in a live-action movie, I don't think that it worked at all. And obviously, we bring Robin into this one as well. And look, I have a problem with Robin in general. Don't get me wrong. I think, once again, in the comics, he's been portrayed very well. But I never really think that's been represented in the movies, just because if Batman is this, destroyed, we don't even need to talk about it. I just don't think Chris O'Donnell's version is one that I particularly clicked with. I think Nicole Kidman's character is a bit weird. It's like we need to work a love interest in there, because why wouldn't we have a love interest in the movie? And again, anytime there's stakes, for example, at the end when Batman's told, oh, you got to save Robin or you've got to save your girlfriend, he just goes, well, I'm just going to do both. And it's like, well, you can't do both. He goes, I'm just going to do both. And like, it's okay. But I probably watched it, I probably watched it quite a lot, actually. It's not as bad as Batman and Robin. But do I ever feel the need to watch it? The answer would be no. And moving on to number 8, we have a more modern one, I suppose. It's Batman versus Superman. I don't hate this. I don't hate it at all. And I think there's a lot that you can take from it. I especially like the way that it's shot. I think some of those opening scenes that you do get with Ben Affleck as Batman really do scream graphic novel, which I think is cool. But again, it's just the plot and it's just the fact that it's all over the place. And the fact, I don't mean thematically, visually, it's so damn dark to the point you're kind of staring on. I can't really tell what's going on. And the title is almost a trick in many ways. I know that Batman and Superman have a bunch of fights, but they never really, Batman's scared of Superman because what can he do? But then he gets over that within about 8 seconds. This is where the movie falls down, especially. I mean, the script's not great, and again, the story's all over the place. But where it really falls down is Batman has all this hate for Superman, the savior of the world, that when he is about to kill him, he finds out that Superman's mum is also called Martha, and because his mother was called Martha, well, I ain't gonna kill you no more. I mean, talk about not standing by your convictions. It's like, Bruce, if you genuinely think he's a threat to humanity, you're going to pal up with him because your mothers share the same name. I mean, what's next? Oh, man, I'm really into the game Bridge. Oh, I love Bridge. I really need a new player on Sundays, so I'm not going to stab you right in the face. And when it comes to Ben Affleck as Batman anyway, it just kind of screams to me that he never really got a proper chance because of all the madness that happened with this and that happened with Justice League, which again, we'll get into in just one second. It was just a tumultuous time for the Batman series, even though these movies are all right, like they're decent, but because we're coming off the Dark Knight Rises and the Dark Knight trilogy, which everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest thing ever, I don't really think DC knew what to do. And because Marvel was absolutely smashing it, they were like, okay, well, we need to create our own multiverse. But instead of like putting everything in place, we'll just call the movie Batman and Superman's in it. Please come and spend a bunch of cash. I mean, it did make around about $800 million. I think it's actually almost $900 million. So it worked as a marketing thing. But to me, if you were going to do a Batman versus Superman movie and you were going to match up to what we've done in the comics, you should be creating a world that we're going to come back to constantly. And I know we did in the Justice League a little bit, but it never really felt like, well, when I left the cinema, I didn't think, oh my gosh, I need to have Batman versus Superman 2. I was more like, I think I need to go and watch that again because a lot of it was really confusing. And tying into that almost directly, number 7, it's the Justice League. A lot of what I just said ties into this. I mean, we know what an absolute mess this was. My word, just go and Google all the problems they were having on set and why we got Zack Snyder's version last year, whenever it was, which is a lot better. I mean, it's way too long, but it is a lot better. And the only reason I put this ahead of Batman versus Superman is because you get the Justice League, right? You get the Flash, you get Wonder Woman and Aquaman, etc. And it's always fun to watch characters that you grew up with running around on the big screen. You giggle, you laugh, like, hee, I can't believe we're doing it. But when did Justice League come out? I mean, I can't even remember. It was a long-ass time ago, and we haven't had another one. And the reason we haven't had another one is because DC can't get it together. Again, when you compare it to the Avengers that had this very strict plan and that basically took over the world and made people Marvel fans, I'm not sure that DC has been able to do, well, they haven't been able to do the same thing. And a huge reason is because the way that they have presented some of their bigger franchises hasn't worked. There's also, the story is kind of lame. Like, it's classic, oh man, I'm mad and I want to take over the world with these boxes. And like, we're talking about boxes and they bring Superman back to life, which is kind of okay. But then they had to do reshoots. So Henry Cavill had to have his moustache CGI'd out of it. However, I do think Ben Affleck is quite I think he gets Batman. And I do like all the little things he added to here, like, he didn't do a gravelly voice. He had an actual voice dismognifier. I just made that up. A modulator, I should have said. I do enjoy the little differences you can bring to the character. And again, I also think Ben Affleck is a very good actor. I guess it's like Clunes back in the 1997 one. I don't think he had a chance. I don't think he had a chance to actually have any kind of influence on it, because do not forget, he was meant to be the director of the Batman. The Batman was going to be his movie, but he just said, you know what, I don't want anything to do with this, which probably ties into the recording of Justice League. However, I do quite like Zack Snyder's version, kind of. I mean, yeah, it's a difficult movie to watch. But at least Cyborg is better fleshed out, right? But my gosh, that's a whole story of its own. We just leave it there. And this is when it starts to get really hard, because all my favorite Batman movies came long before these ones came out. So in next, after a lot of thinking, I'm going with Batman Returns. Now, I like Batman Returns a lot. I think it is awesome. But my biggest criticism with it is that Batman isn't in it enough. And if you haven't watched Batman Returns in a while, go in it with that in your brain. I mean, it's basically a story about Catwoman, the Penguin, with Christopher Walken walking around doing his thing as well. But this is okay, because, again, what it did was Tim Burton went, man, these comics are flubbed up. They are really screwed up. Every single person in it has got something wrong with them. That should be our overall theme, which is why it's so cool. Like, Danny DeVito's Penguin does disgusting, horrible things from minute one until, I think we can spoil Batman Returns, until he dies at the end. And I'll always stand by the fact, and I debate this a lot, but ultimately, if somebody busted in here right now and put a gun to my head, I think Michael Keaton is the best Batman, in the sense that his Bruce Wayne is awesome and his Batman is awesome. And I think sometimes when it's come to people like Christian Bale and Ben Affleck too, and the other ones, everybody else, sometimes that balance isn't there. But every time Michael Keaton was Bruce Wayne, I thought he nailed it. And every time he was Batman, I thought that he nailed it. Especially obviously in Batman 1989. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. You're like, that's not a normal thing to do. Oh, wait, you're not a normal human being. So I probably could have used more Batman, in my Batman Returns, but the snowy atmosphere is absolutely phenomenal. I love the fact that Tim Burton pushed this as hard as he possibly could, and the Batmobile is just absolutely brilliant. Like, I know that's in the 1989 one as well, but it's probably exactly the same in this one, but it always felt different to me as a kid, again, because I'm a stupid child and I don't know what's going on. But Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman was absolute inspired casting, and you do have all these famous faces all over the place, and that's sort of become a trope of superhero movies now, like, oh man, we have to get A-listers to fill in these smaller roles, but we were kind of doing it back then, again, because the success of Batman 1989 was so big, they were like, let's do this with Batman Returns. And as we hinted at earlier, this got so evil and so screwed up that McDonald's released a statement that basically said, look, we're really sorry that we've teamed up with these people and we're selling you their toys. From now on, we're going to watch the movie before we sign any deals, which is what caused Batman Forever to be so shiny and all of that. I do think when you are talking about making sure you tie it into Batman lore, Batman Returns is right on the money. It addresses so many different themes and how dark and horrible Gotham City actually is. It's not an easy watch, but I'm glad that there is one of those in the canon, right? One that you sit down, you're like, man, this is kind of making me feel massively uncomfortable. And if we ever could do a proper Dark Knight Returns movie and get all these people back, I'd be happy. Moving on to number 5. No one's going to agree with this, because this is probably one of the most controversial movies there is. I'm putting The Dark Knight Rises. Now, I like The Dark Knight Rises. I understand that it was basically only made because Warner Brothers said, oh, hello, Christopher Nolan. You've made us a ton of money with those other two, and I know you kind of want to finish it after The Dark Knight. We don't want to. I mean, that's why it's called The Dark Knight Rises, because The Dark Knight was such a success. They were like, no. You must call it The Dark Knight 2. He's like, but that doesn't make any sense as a trilogy. They were like, well, you better come up with another word, though. So they came up with Rises. Now, I like Bane in this. I like Tom Hardy's representation, because I just think it's really strange. Like, why is he talking like this? Why? I don't know. No one ever explains it, but that kind of I can't think of the right word, but it's nothing like the Bane that we're used to. Again, he comes up in Batman and Robin, and I guess it's kind of okay because that is how he's represented in the comics. But the fact that we'd already done that and it came from a movie that was so deplorable and so terrible, I think you did need to have a new take on it. And again, as we've already talked about, it's the coolest thing with a comic. You can take a character and you can present it in so many different ways. And that's what Tom Hardy did. I also think Christian Bale is a great Batman. I know his voice got more gravular, and people got annoyed with it after a while, but at least it made sense. So that's one of the reasons Christian Bale did it, because he'd be like, well, it's not like this is the most mysterious costume in the world. Somebody could probably look at my jaw and figure it out, so I better talk as if I'm somebody else. And also, if you want to get into it, you can say, well, actually, no, when he puts on the cowl, he feels like a totally different person because he's screwed up in the head, but we don't need to talk about that here. I also like Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it, who's essentially Robin. I'm a big fan of him. I think Anne Hathaway as Catwoman does a really good job Two, I just think it's a really easy to watch movie. I like the fact that Bruce Wayne is all old and a little bit like Dark Knight Returns at the start, like, oh man, I don't want to get involved anymore. And it's a decent Batman film. I understand that there is criticisms you can throw at it, and it doesn't hold a candle to The Dark Knight, but it's absolutely something that I'm always happy to return to, and I get a kick out of it every single time. And if somebody had said to me, third Batman movie in this trilogy, or stop at 2, I'd always take a third, even though it's, not superior at all to the other 2 in it. The ending does annoy me. When Alfred is sat there in France or Italy, wherever the hell he is, and he looks over and smiles. You think, oh man, please cut. And then you see Bruce Wayne sat there with Catwoman. You're like, damn it, why did we do it? But look, that's just Hollywood for you. Sometimes you have to end with the more, well, in case someone's all like, I don't understand what's going on. Well, now you knew what was going on. So what I do is when I get to that point, I just turn it off. And then I have to worry about it. And this may surprise some people. And honestly, 4 and 3, I sat down with for about an hour. That's how close it was. And going with Batman Begins. Now, I cannot tell you how much this meant to me when it came out, because I'd been scarred by Batman and Robin. I was still a very, very young man. And when I saw that a new one was coming out and I watched the trailers and I was like, wait a minute, this looks like the Batman movie I've been waiting for. I was terrified when I went to the cinema. Went to the cinema at 9:30 a.m. in the morning, because it was the very first showing I could get to, with a lot of Batman garb on. And the person behind the desk who sent me my ticket, did Batman throw up on you? And I was like, that's not very nice. She was probably joking, but here we are a long time later, and I'm still thinking about it. And not only did we go full into the origin story, which in 2005, I think it was still quite a new thing to do. Like when you do it now, it's like, oh gosh, not again. I get it. Your parents died, Bruce. Would you get over it, for goodness sake? But back then, that wasn't the case at all. And it's so different. It was such like a 180 from all that Batman and Robin's guffins. And also, Christopher Nolan, as he did with the entire trilogy, was he treated it like, okay, we live in a real world. Could Batman exist within it? And the answer was yes. And this is how we're going to do it. Obviously, you got Liam Neeson, you got Morgan Freeman, you got Rachel Holmes, which is now a little bit weird in hindsight, but whatever. It worked at the time. And the way it kind of moves all these sort of, I guess, periphery figures in terms of the live action movies, especially into the spotlight, was awesome. Like, whoever thought the Scarecrow would be a main villain in a Batman movie? But again, because they were able to do that in a way that was realistic, they said, that's the one we want to do. Also, you stay away from the Joker, you stay away from Two-Face and Riddler, ones that we had already done. And one of the best things about Batman is that the array of villains are absolutely awesome, such as Man-Bat. Who doesn't like Man-Bat? So when it comes to this movie too, it means a lot to me. Like, it means so much to me, and I will always defend Christian Bale as Batman. I think he did an absolutely fantastic job. I like Michael Caine as Alfred, and I just like the story here. I just like it. It ticks along, and there's massive plot holes in it, don't get me wrong. And the Liam Neeson, I'm actually Ra's al Ghul. I mean, it is what it is, but I must have seen this movie 50, 60 times. And what I really love about it, and the Tim Burton movies do this as well, is you have all of those moments. You have Batman flying through the air with the music playing. You have the head turns. You have the little things that you would see in the comics go, that is so cool. That's the best thing about it. It has moments that are super duper cool. So this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Obviously, we'll get to The Dark Knight in due course, but those three movies, and in general, I think transcend films. Genuinely think that. They mean so much to me. There's a couple of thumbs. Which, of course, means in at number 3 is Batman 1989. Sat down for ages, Batman Begins, Batman 1989. But Batman 1989, again, Michael Keaton, who I do think is the best Batman. Obviously, Jack Nicholson as the Joker, also absolutely awesome. But again, this was the first live-action Batman movie I ever saw. And sometimes you can't get away from nostalgia, and you can't get away from how that made you feel at the time. And also, it is not aged at all. I mean, it's now, 1989? I shouldn't do this, should I? So it's 33 years old? Is that correct? I think that's correct. My maths is absolutely atrocious, quite clearly. I can watch it, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, yesterday, tomorrow, and it's just so awesome. And it's just some of the, Michael Keaton grabbing the guy, I'm Batman, all of that, which apparently he wasn't meant to say. I think I'm making that up now. I've read so much about these movies, I sometimes think, have I invented trivia in my head? But I think he ad-libbed that on the spot, which goes to show. And do not forget, he was thrown to the wolves when it was announced that Michael Keaton was going to be Batman, not the guy from Beetlejuice, but it goes to show. This is why when Robert Pattinson was also announced, I'm like, look, I don't really know. I haven't seen many of his movies for one reason or another, but let's wait and see, because actually in the history of Batman movies, more often than not, they have gotten it right. But again, from the design of Gotham City to the Batmobile to everything Tim Burton brings to it to Vicky Vale and blah, blah, blah. It's just, I think it's awesome. I think it's excellent. The only real shame is that we never got to see this version of Harvey Two-Face become Harvey Two-Face. But, what are you going to do? There was a massive screw up in a few movies' time. But it's not only one of the best Batman movies ever made, it's one of the best movies ever made. And it was such a huge success. Like, there's so many documentaries you can watch online now that talks about how Warner Brothers almost engineered it to make the amount of money it did do. But if we want to talk about hyperbole and make some hyperbolic statements, which I will do, if you want to tell me that we don't have the superhero movies that we have today with that Batman 1989, I am coming on your side of the fence. That sounded terrible. I didn't mean like that. This is where I've cheated a little bit, because now you're probably going, well, wait a minute. Clearly The Dark Knight's going to be in here, but there's 2 movies left. So which one have I pulled out of left field? Well, it's Lego Batman. That's right. Lego Batman is number 2. And the reason Lego Batman is number 2 is not only is it genuinely funny, like it makes me laugh out loud, but I would probably go on a debate show and say that there is no other Batman movie ever that understands the character of Batman and that he's flipping lonely as well as Lego Batman. There are moments in that film that genuinely make me emotional and make me feel a little bit like somebody is cutting onions, because when he's walking around his mansion and he just wants to have friends, but he can't have friends because he's so worried about them dying, because the last people he was attached to, e.g. his parents, they got killed. So how the hell can he ever have trust in life itself that it's not going to happen again? That is genius. And this is happening in what is essentially a kid's movie. And again, you can find this out if you go read about it. The people that made this completely understood it. And one of their big MOs was, we have to make sure Batman is like Batman. The reason Batman has been so endearing for, however long it's been, is because he has these certain traits that speak to people. So even though we're trying to make a fun, laugh, ha-ha, funny movie, we can't forget about that. And it never does. And of course, at the end of the film, he understands how to do this. And it's like, but is he going to keep on to that? Because this is Batman we're talking about. So, and Will Arnett is just so good as the voice. Like, it's so funny. I'd be happy to watch that movie every single day for the rest of my life, and I would always find something extra about it. So I'll keep this one short because, again, no, it's not a live action film unless you believe that Lego is real, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you've decided you never want to watch this because you think it looks too childish, I promise you it is a masterpiece. Which brings us to number 1, which is the most boring answer ever, but there's a reason it's boring, and that's because everybody thinks the same, because it's a work of art, and it's The Dark Knight. And I don't really know how to explain it to you other than what we've already said, in the sense, if you're trying to create a Batman movie that could exist in the world that we currently inhabit, this is how you would do it. Like, I don't think it's ever going to be topped. Maybe some other movies like The Batman is going to be able to match it, but you are not going to be able to beat The Dark Knight, especially because the main story is Batman versus the Joker, right? Everyone loves Batman. Everyone loves the Joker. He's the best villain, probably the best villain in all of superheroes. And ties into the Michael Keaton stuff. The fact that we gave it to Heath Ledger, and everyone's like, Heath Ledger, you stupid rubbish, you can't give it to him. And he delivers one of the best performances that you're ever likely to see. It's untoppable. And it's just genius. And it's like watching a crime movie, and everyone just acts their socks off, and it all makes sense, and it just ticks along, and it's dark, and it's evil. And Harvey Two-Face, we finally get to see that character revealed as well, and he's got all the screwed up face and everything like that. And the line at the end, I mean, it makes no sense. Like, again, don't get me wrong, I've gone on forums and done this, but the whole, I killed those people, when you could just say, oh, didn't the Joker do it? No, it was me. Like, you don't have to do it. But I don't care, because it once again presents a moment that something that Batman would do, but also it's just awesome when he flipping, rides off on the Bat Pod, and you've got Commissioner Gordon going, oh man, he's our hero. It's awesome. And Gary Oldman is excellent in that role as well, which is a massively important role. Don't forget Commissioner Gordon. And this is what I'm really, really hoping the Batman gets right, because it's probably best explored in these movies, the Nolan movies. But the way those two work together is, it's important. It's important. Otherwise, the whole thing doesn't work. Because again, it is just a normal man running around using his riches. So, I mean, I can't believe I need to go into this any further, because if you know, you know. And if you don't know, what are you doing? Why did you even watch this video to begin with? It is, I mean, we're going to break it down in this way. It is probably my favorite film ever made. It makes me happy. It gives me chills. And I've seen it, hundreds and hundreds of times. And I will continue to watch it as well. This, to me, is, Year One or Dark Knight Returns. I mean, all the things we've already talked about, taking all those elements, and we figured out a way to poster it onto the big screen. And that, to me, is flubbing fantastic. And it's number 1 in this list. But ultimately, most of the top 5, you just put them into one big ball, and it makes me happy. Now, of course, make sure you go in the comments and let me know what your list would be. You're going to disagree with me, because there's no way that anybody could on a subject like this. And of course, normal content will resume tomorrow, but I just really wanted to talk about that, man. Also, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the bell ding ding so whenever it's going live. There is a video on the screen. Give it a click. GrillerMine.com/Simon if you want to use code Simon, get 10% off Grill of Mine products. I use them. I think they're really good stuff. Cups, Greg Doucette's Power 13 Cookbook, Twitter, Instagram at Simon316, merchandise, Cameo, all these kind of things. They're in the description, so if you just want to give it a click and see if something works for you to support the channel, I would massively appreciate it. Enjoy the Batman when it does come out. Yes, I am going to do some content on it, so, keep an eye out. Otherwise, take care, and I'll see you soon.